wedding or big celebration, you need a great cake. But whether it comes in the shape of a cookie monster or designer shoes, there's a whole lot more to making these edible works of art than just baking. So, how do they do it? Here in Sydenham, South London, they make some of the fanciest cakes money can buy. Bakery manager Tony Lear numbers top celebrities like David Beckham, Elton John and even Prince Charles among his customers.
Here at the cake store we do hundreds of cakes every week. These are just a few of the ingredients we use for our sponge. The most important ingredient being the flour.
The problem for Tony is that ordinary flour contains sticky stuff called gluten, which would make baking a light, fluffy sponge impossible. The solution is a special type of flour.
There are three types of flour. The strong flour for bread, there's a medium flour for biscuits and pastries, and there's a lighter flour. We use the lighter flour for the sponge because there's less gluten.
The special light flour comes from mills like this one, 6,000 kilometres away in Teutopolis, Illinois. Each year, SEMA Milling processes more than 400,000 tonnes of wheat. The trouble is, the grains are mixed up with a whole heap of useless stuff like straw and husks, collectively known as the chaff. To separate the wheat from the chaff, the grain is sieved, shaken and blasted with air to blow away the lighter dust and straw. But if you try making a cake with flour from the whole grain, you get something more high fibre than high society. The grain is made of three parts: the husk or bran, the seed or germ, and the starchy white endosperm. For fine cake flour, they just need the white stuff. Once upon a time, they'd use granite millstones to crack the grains apart. These days, they use a battery of stainless steel rollers, turning towards each other to pull the grains through and crush them. But that still leaves you with all the bran, wheat germ and starch all mixed together. So the milled wheat is piped to the top of the mill for a little bit of rock and roll. The mill's attic holds what looks like wobbly wardrobes, but inside the frantic furniture are stacks of graded sieves. As they shake from side to side, the flour falls through. And only the finest flour makes it through the smallest sieve at the bottom. The miller keeps a careful eye on the process from this control room to ensure the plant is always operating safely and efficiently. Flour dust might look innocuous, but if the concentration reaches 55 grams per cubic metre of air, it becomes highly explosive. One small spark, and they won't be making cake flour, they'll be toast. After rolling and sieving the grains up to 5 times, the pure white flour is loaded up for transport. These specially designed bulk tankers carry up to 25 tonnes of flour for delivery to cake bakers all over the world. Like Tony at the cake store in South London. Each month, they get through over 300 bags of flour. They start by loading the flour into an industrial-sized mixer and adding the other ingredients. But Tony has a problem. To make bread rise, bakers rely on a reaction between yeast and gluten. Tony's cake mix has no yeast and very little gluten, so he has to use the mixer to work in thousands of air bubbles that will expand in the heat of the oven, raising the cake. Over 50 kilograms of light, fluffy cake mix is now ready for pouring. Depending on what kind of cake you want to make, each tray is filled with a precise amount of the mix by a machine called the depositor. The sponge cake is then baked 20 trays at a time in a 30,000-pound fan-assisted baker's oven for 30 minutes at 200 degrees Celsius. To keep it looking tidy, each sponge gets a short back and sides and front.
Thank you very much.
Then they're cut to shape and handed over to Mixagady. But if he tried to build up a 5-layer cake of ordinary sponge, it would sag under its own weight. The secret to the cake's structural strength is the special flour, which creates a firmer sponge with lots of small bubbles instead of a few big ones.
It does make a lot of difference, especially on high cakes. It's like making it more steadier, firmer, and make it a lot easier for our job as well.
It takes a tough cake to take the strain of layers of sponge and a mountain of decoration. The toughened cakes are dipped, sprinkled and iced into any design you fancy, from fairy tale castles to designer handbags full of money. Almost everything that goes on top of these cakes is edible. But at the heart of every one of these exquisite creations is a sponge made from the finest white flour. All that decoration is just the icing on the cake.